They always say you can never truly know someone. But I thought I knew Lily better than anyone, really. We met in college, got married a few years after graduation, and I believed we were in a solid, unshakable place. I had no reason to doubt her, at least, not a single reason. Sure, every marriage has its ups and downs, but I thought we had something special, something strong. Or at least, I thought so. But one day, everything came crashing down, and suddenly, it felt like I had been living in a lie all this time. I still remember exactly when it all started, like it happened yesterday. I was at work, just another typical day at my marketing job, when a notification pinged on my phone. It was a text from an unknown number, with a video attached. Normally, I'd just delete stuff like that without thinking twice. But something about it caught my attention. Curiosity got the best of me, so I clicked play. I wish I hadn't, because there she was, in full HD Lily, the woman I had loved, trusted, and spent my life with. And she wasn't alone. She was with several men, tangled up in a way I never could have imagined. It wasn't some random, low-quality video either. It was professionally made, good lighting, proper angles, the whole production. My first reaction? Numbness. It was like my brain couldn't even process what I was seeing. I replayed it, hoping maybe I was mistaken, that it was just some woman who looked like her. But no, there she was, living a life I had no clue about. My stomach dropped, my blood went cold, and then came the anger. Pure, unfiltered rage. How long had this been going on? Why had she done this to me, to us? I was at a loss. I didn't even know who to call, where to go for answers. But by the time I started processing it all, the video had already spread like wildfire online. And soon enough, people were messaging me, asking if I knew that my wife was actually Sienna Knight, her stage name. And to answer that question, no, I had no idea. No idea that the woman I thought I knew was secretly living this double life, acting in adult films. But what really got to me wasn't just the video. It was the comments. The vile, disgusting things people were saying about her, about us. It was like she was some kind of underground sensation now. With every view and comment, my anger just grew. Our private life, something that was supposed to be sacred, was now on display for the whole world to see. I felt humiliated, betrayed, like everything I thought I knew had been ripped out from under me. Before I could even wrap my head around it, I bumped into David. David. He was an old friend, more of an acquaintance really, but I had always known he had a thing for Lily. You know the type. The guy who's always hanging around, being friendly, trying too hard to be the good guy. It seemed harmless at the time, but now? Now, I saw it for what it was. And of course, David knew everything about Lily's secret life. We ran into each other at a coffee shop of all places. I'd gone there to clear my head, and of course, he was there. He walked over, a smirk on his face like he was in on some joke I wasn't aware of. Then, with that smug tone of his, he said, "Hey man, rough times. Heard about Lily's career change?" There was a mix of contempt in his voice, but also a twisted sort of amusement, like he was getting a kick out of my misery. He dropped little hints, talking about her past and the secrets they shared. It felt like he was enjoying every second of watching me squirm, like he was in on some big secret I was just now figuring out. I didn't know if he was just messing with me or if he actually knew something, but all I could think was that Lily had kept this from me. And then it hit me. What else was she hiding? My mind was spinning, and I couldn't focus on anything other than the image of her with those men, the sound of David's mocking voice, and the realization that everything I thought I knew about Lily was an illusion. The woman I had loved, built my life around, was nothing like I thought. And what made it worse? Everyone else seemed to know about her double life before I did. When I got home that night, I couldn't even look at her. Every word she said made my skin crawl. "Hey, babe," she said, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just torn our life apart. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her. I really stared, trying to find the person I thought I knew, trying to see past the cracks, past the lies that seemed to flow so easily from her. And there she was, looking back at me like she had no idea that anything had changed. "Something wrong?" she asked, playing the innocent card. I could hear the fear in her voice, but she kept the act up. For a moment, I let her. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I wasn't ready to face the truth that the woman I married, the woman I trusted, was someone else entirely. And deep down, I knew that once I confronted her, there would be no turning back. Whatever trust, love, or connection we had would be gone. But facing that truth, I wasn't sure I was ready for it. I couldn't sleep for days after finding out. Every time I closed my eyes, that video replayed in my mind like a broken record. Slowly, all the pieces started to fit together. Late nights, those business trips she claimed were for work, the random phone calls. How had I missed all the signs? I kept playing it over and over in my head, trying to understand how my life had spiraled out of control like this. The betrayal was one thing, but the lies cut deeper than anything. I couldn't sit on it anymore. I had to confront her. So I waited. Every minute felt like an eternity. And then, as usual, she came home late, acting like everything was just fine. "Hey, babe, I grabbed some takeout," she said casually, tossing a bag of Chinese food onto the counter. The smell filled the room, but I couldn't focus on that. All I could think about was the life I thought we shared, and how it had all been a lie. I could barely stomach it, watching her move around the house, acting like everything was perfectly normal, when in reality, nothing was. I couldn't pretend anymore. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm, keeping every ounce of emotion buried. The second I said it, I saw the panic flicker in her eyes. She knew it was over. She dropped her purse on the couch, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in her face. "What's going on, John?" she asked, her voice trembling just enough to give her away. I didn't say a word. Instead, I pulled out my phone, opened the video, and slammed it down on the table. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. She didn't touch the phone, didn't even look at it. She knew exactly what was playing on the screen. "Let me explain," she began, but I didn't let her finish. "Explain what? That you've been filming with a bunch of guys for God knows how long? That you've been lying to me, to everyone, about who you really are?" The words rushed out, and for a moment, it felt like I couldn't stop them. All the anger, the confusion, the deep betrayal, it all came spilling out. Lily inhaled deeply, and for a split second, I thought I saw something resembling guilt in her eyes. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by something colder. Defiance. "John, I was going to tell you. I just didn't know how," she said, like that would make everything right. "It's not what you think," she said, trying to backpedal. "Not what I think." "Really, Lily? Because it looks pretty damn clear to me. You're an adult film actress, and you lied about it. How long has this been going on? Was this happening before we even got married?" My voice was rising, and I could feel the anger boiling over. I was shaking now, fists clenched at my sides. Then she dropped the bomb. "Yes," she said, without hesitation. "Before we got married. I've been doing this for a while, and I did it for us, John. For the money." Her words were like a slap in the face. She tried to sound sincere, but I wasn't buying it. "You remember when we were struggling with bills and I said I found some freelance work? Well, this was it. It paid well, and I thought it would be temporary." The punch landed in my gut. I wanted to believe her, wanted to think she did this for us, for the sake of our financial future. But everything about it felt wrong. The secrecy, the lies, the double life. It wasn't just about money. There was something darker beneath the surface, and I needed to understand what it was. "So, that's it? You just woke up one day and thought, I'll sell my body for cash, and you didn't think to talk to me about it? To figure out a different way together?" I practically shouted now, my voice echoing through the room. Lily stood there, her eyes narrowed in defiance, and for the first time, I felt like I was talking to someone else. "You don't get it, John. You never have," she snapped. "It wasn't just about money. It was about control. It was the only thing I could control. My body, my choices." She leaned in, a dangerous fire in her eyes. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had power, like I was in control. "Maybe it's not your idea of normal, maybe it disgusts you, but it's my life, my choice." Her words struck deep, and I felt like a stranger was standing in front of me. This wasn't the Lily I married. The woman who used to talk to me about our future, our dreams. This was someone else, and I hated her for it. But there was a nagging feeling inside me, something that told me this wasn't just her choice. Someone had to be behind it, pushing her, encouraging her. Someone else was involved. Then I met Rachel. Lily had mentioned her before, but always brushed her off as just a friend. The second I met Rachel, though, I knew there was something more to their relationship. Rachel was confident, sharp, with a certain energy that screamed trouble. It was as if she thrived on chaos, and Lily was her perfect target. Rachel was always around, always lurking in the background. I once overheard a conversation between them when Lily didn't know I was home. Rachel was talking about how empowering it was to be in control, to own her sexuality, to not let anyone dictate her life. "You don't need John to define you, babe," Rachel said, her voice dripping with authority. "You do. You men are disposable. Remember that." I could see it in Lily's eyes, the way she hung on every word Rachel said. The power, the fame, the money. It was like a drug, and Rachel was the dealer. But there was more to Rachel than I realized. She wasn't just a friend. She had connections, deep ties to the industry. She was pushing Lily further and further into it, convincing her that this was the only way to live, that this was the only path worth taking. I tried to warn Lily, tried to make her see that Rachel was a bad influence, but she wouldn't listen. "Rachel understands me in a way you never could," she snapped one night when I confronted her. "She's not afraid to take risks, to live life on her own terms. Unlike you." That cut deep. I was angry, yes, but what hurt the most was knowing that Lily was so far gone that she couldn't even see how much damage this was causing. She didn't want to see it, or maybe she couldn't. A part of her was thriving on the attention, the control, the rush of living dangerously. And in that moment, I realized that the woman I loved, the Lily I fell for, was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone I didn't want to know. I felt helpless, watching my life spin out of control with no way to stop it. Lily was in the driver's seat, speeding toward who knows where, with Rachel cheering her on from the passenger side. And I was just a passenger in my own life, strapped in, waiting for the inevitable crash. I couldn't stand it anymore. The lies, the betrayal, the sheer audacity of it all. It was eating me alive. Every time I went to work, I felt like people knew, like they were whispering behind my back. "There goes John, married to a porn star," they probably thought as I passed by. Every time I looked at Lily, all I could feel was disgust. It was like I couldn't breathe. And the worst part? She acted like none of this was any big deal, like it was just some phase we'd eventually move past. If she thought I'd just sit back and let this all slide, she was living in a fantasy. I needed to do something, anything, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain and humiliation she put me through. So, I decided to go after the one thing that mattered to her most, her precious career. And believe me, it wasn't just about sharing that video anymore. I was done being the good guy. I wanted the world to see who Lily really was. Sienna Knight, the woman who destroyed everything I had. At first, I started small, creating fake profiles, posting screenshots of her videos across every social media platform I could think of. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. I made sure to tag her, use hashtags like #SiennaKnightExposed, and connect it all back to her real name. I wanted everyone to see what she was really doing behind closed doors. And the backlash came fast. Strangers flooded her inbox with cruel messages, calling her every name imaginable. My phone was blowing up too. Texts from people who had seen what I posted, asking what the hell was going on, expressing shock, disgust, all of it. Honestly, it felt good in a twisted way, like I was finally getting control back. Like I was showing her that actions have consequences. I wanted her to feel the shame, the dirtiness of it all. But, as with anything on the internet, things got out of hand. What I thought would hurt her ended up doing the opposite. She started gaining supporters, fans who defended her, calling her brave for embracing her sexuality, for owning her choices. They turned her into some kind of hero, a symbol of empowerment. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Her followers kept growing, and soon she was getting messages of support from people who looked at her like she was some kind of revolutionary. My whole plan was backfiring, and it was infuriating. The harder I tried to tear her down, the higher they lifted her. And Lily? She was loving every minute of it. She started posting photos of herself, all empowered, writing captions like, "I am more than my body," and "Own your truth, no matter what they say." It made my blood boil. I couldn't figure out how she was flipping this around, how she was becoming some twisted inspiration for others. I was trying to destroy her, but she was getting praised. That's when Ethan entered the picture. Ethan was a journalist for one of those edgy liberal magazines, one of those publications that thrives on controversy. He reached out to Lily, offering to do a piece on her life, focusing on the struggles and triumphs of women in the adult industry. I felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't supposed to be a feel-good article. It was supposed to be a scandal, a downfall, but Ethan saw it differently. He wanted to glorify her choices, to turn her into a voice for other women in the industry. I couldn't let that happen. I had to stop it. So I found out where Ethan lived and decided to pay him a visit. When he answered the door, I could tell I'd caught him off guard. He was this artsy-looking guy. Long hair, thick-rimmed glasses, the whole cliché. And he had that air about him, like he was somehow better, like he had some enlightened perspective on life that I just didn't understand. "Look, man," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I know you're planning to write that article on Lily, but you don't know the full story. She's not some hero. She's a liar, a manipulator. She destroyed our marriage. And now you're helping her build a fake narrative to cover all of that up. Don't you see how wrong that is?" I was practically begging him to understand, to see how much this meant to me. But Ethan just looked at me with that condescending smile and said, "You know, John, sometimes it's better to let people tell their own stories. What Lily's doing is brave, and it's not up to you to dictate how she lives her life." I wanted to punch him, wipe that smug look off his face. But I knew if I did, I'd be the one getting arrested, not him. When the article finally came out, I felt like my world was crumbling. There was Lily on the cover, looking like some martyr, soft lighting, perfect makeup. The headline screamed, "Breaking Boundaries, the Real Life of Sienna Knight." And the story? It was a puff piece. It painted her as this misunderstood woman who had taken control of her life and refused to be ashamed of her choices. And there was barely any mention of me. I wasn't even a footnote in her grand narrative of liberation. I lost friends over it. People I thought would support me started saying things like, "Maybe you're being too hard on her. She's just trying to find herself." Find herself? She found herself all right, on camera, with a bunch of guys doing whatever they wanted. And I was supposed to be the one overreacting? I'd lay in bed every night, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was losing everything. My dignity, my sanity, my entire life. The need for revenge consumed me. I wanted her to pay for what she did. But the more I tried to tear her down, the more isolated I became. It was like quicksand. The more I fought, the deeper I sank. I started missing work, drinking more than I should. I was losing touch with the person I used to be, the person before all of this chaos started. Meanwhile, Lily seemed completely unfazed. She embraced the attention, thrived on it. I'd overhear her on the phone with Rachel, laughing about how the article was blowing up, how she was getting interview offers and speaking engagements. "This is just the beginning, babe," I heard Rachel say once. "The sky's the limit." And Lily? She ate it up like it was a feast, oblivious to the wreckage she'd left behind in our lives. That's when I realized that this was no longer about me. The anger, the revenge, it was consuming me. It was turning me into someone I didn't recognize. But I didn't know how to stop. Every time I tried to step back, every time I thought about letting it go, all I could think about was that damn video, the lies, the betrayal. And every time I thought I could escape it, it would all come rushing back like a tidal wave. I'd find myself right back where I started, angry, bitter, and dead set on making her pay. The thing is, I could feel it. I was losing. I was losing grip on reality, on my relationships, on my sanity. And I had no idea how to get any of it back. There was this moment when everything just hit me like a ton of bricks. I realized how far things had really gone. I had been surviving, sure, but it felt like I was just living to live, going through the motions without any real purpose. I'd wake up every morning with this gnawing emptiness in my chest, wondering what new disaster the day would bring. And every time I looked at Lily, it was like seeing two different people. There was Sienna Knight, the rising star, the fantasy woman everyone seemed to want a piece of. And then there was Lily, the woman I married, the one who used to curl up next to me at night, talking about our future, our dreams. Now, she was a stranger. Her life was falling apart at home. She was angry, always snapping at me, on edge like she was waiting for something to explode. Sometimes I'd find her crying, sitting on the bathroom floor, her head buried in her knees. But then she'd snap back, pull herself together, and head out to be Sienna Knight, the confident, empowered woman flashing a perfect smile for the camera. She acted like she had it all figured out, like she was in control of everything. But I could see through it. I could see the cracks, the desperation beneath the surface. And then it happened. I got the call at 3 a.m. The call that changed everything. It was Lily, her voice shaking, frantic, barely able to string together a coherent sentence. "John, please. You need to come get me. He attacked me." My heart stopped for a moment. I almost hung up, thinking it was a sick joke, but the terror in her voice was real. I found her outside a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. She was shaking, her clothes torn, bruises all over her arms. There was a wild, desperate look in her eyes, something I'd never seen before. "What the hell happened?" I demanded, pulling her into the car. She wouldn't look at me, just stared straight ahead, trembling like speaking the words would make it all real. "It was a fan," she said, her voice cracking. "He came to see me at a signing last week. He said he was a huge fan. I never thought he'd follow me." She was sobbing now, words spilling out in broken pieces. "I thought he was harmless, just another guy who watched my videos. But tonight he showed up, and when I told him to leave, he lost it." She was gasping for air, struggling to get the words out. He said I led him on, that I owed him." She couldn't finish the sentence, but I didn't need her to. I knew what had happened. For a brief moment, all the anger I'd been carrying toward her just vanished. Because as much as I hated what she'd done, she was still Lily. And seeing her like this, beaten, terrified, gutted me. I wanted to find that guy and tear him apart. But all I could think about was getting her somewhere safe. Getting her out of this mess. We ended up at a 24-hour diner, sitting in a booth under the harsh fluorescent lights. Lily sat across from me, picking at her scrambled eggs, her face still streaked with tears. She looked fragile, like she might break at any moment. "What are we going to do?" she whispered, barely glancing up at me. For the first time in months, I didn't have an answer. But what could I do? As much as I hated her, I couldn't stand to see her like this. And yeah, part of me blamed myself. All the things I'd done. Spreading those posts, trying to ruin her. What if I'd pushed this crazy fan too far? What if my revenge was the reason she was sitting there, broken and bruised? The cops caught the guy a few days later. He was some obsessed fan who couldn't handle the fact that Sienna Knight wasn't interested in him. When they found him, they discovered a shrine to her. Posters, DVDs, screenshots of her online accounts. It made me sick to think about how far her life had fallen. But that was just the start of the fallout. The incident brought even more attention to Lily. More articles, more interviews, more public appearances. It felt like I couldn't escape it. Every time I turned on the TV or checked my phone, there she was, her face staring back at me, reminding me of everything that had happened. No matter how much I tried to distance myself, I kept getting dragged back into it. One night, I sat alone in our apartment, staring at my reflection in the window. I didn't recognize the guy looking back at me. I used to be calm, rational. I used to have a life, a good life. But now, all I felt was rage, confusion, and guilt. I didn't know how to make it stop. And Lily? She was spiraling. She'd flipped between being Sienna Knight, the confident, empowered star, and this broken person who was hiding from the world. I wanted to help her, but I didn't know how. The more I tried, the more I felt like I was losing myself. And then one night, everything came to a head. We had one of our screaming matches. Nothing new there. But this time, it was different. There was this rawness to it. Like everything we'd been holding back just came spilling out. "You ruined me, Lily," I yelled, my voice echoing through the room. You destroyed our marriage, our lives. All for what? For money? For fame? She stood there, trembling, but there was fire in her eyes. And what about you, John? She snapped. You think you're the victim here? You've made my life a living hell. I'm not the only one who ruined this marriage. You did too. With your revenge, your hatred, your need to punish me. Her words hit like a slap. I was wrong, yeah. But you're no saint. You've done things I can never forgive. So stop pretending like you're the hero in all of this. You're just as messed up as I am. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. And for the first time, I saw myself clearly. I saw the anger, the bitterness, the hate that had taken over my life. And I knew she was right. I wasn't the victim. I wasn't the hero. I was just as lost as she was. I finally realized I was just another person, lost in a world that had fallen apart, trying to make sense of it all. In my efforts to destroy Lily, I ended up destroying myself. That night, I walked out. I didn't say a word. I just grabbed my jacket, left through the door, and kept walking until my legs couldn't take it anymore. I collapsed onto a curb, staring at the flickering city lights, asking myself, what happened to us? How did we get here? How did everything slip away? It finally hit me. The revenge, the anger, it wasn't worth it. I had become someone I didn't recognize, consumed by the need to tear Lily down. I had ruined everything that once made me feel whole. I wanted to let go of the bitterness, wanted to forgive, but I didn't know how. I didn't know if I could. All I knew was that something had to shift, because if it didn't, neither of us would be left with anything at all. And maybe that was the real tragedy of it. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting in a therapist's office, pouring my heart out to a stranger about my anger, my broken marriage, everything, well, I would have laughed in your face. But there I was, unloading my mess for some guy with a notepad, paid to listen to it all. When you reach rock bottom, the only way to go is up. And I had hit the lowest point I'd ever been. After everything, Lily's life, the public fallout, my own attempts at revenge, the dust finally started to settle. It wasn't like some dramatic turning point where everything just clicked into place. It was slower than that, like waking up from a nightmare and realizing that the world still exists, that there might be a chance to start over. Lily was the first to make a move. I didn't see it coming. One day, she just walked in and said, I'm done. I'm leaving it all behind. The videos, the name, the industry. I wanted to say something sharp, something to hurt her the way she'd hurt me. But when I looked at her, I saw exhaustion. The bruises had healed, but there were emotional scars, deep, hidden ones. All I could ask was, why now? She took a deep breath and looked down. I can't do it anymore, John. I'm tired. Tired of being Sienna Knight. Tired of pretending this life is about power and fame. It's not. It's lonely, and it's destroying me. I could hear the vulnerability in her voice. For the first time, I saw how deeply the industry had damaged her. She wasn't the woman I once knew. She was struggling, trying to pick up the pieces of what was left. Leaving wasn't easy for her. There were contracts, people holding on to her, pulling her back. After she finally broke free, she had to deal with rejection, job after job, all because of the name that was attached to her. She was trying to get back to something normal, but it wasn't that simple. Being tied to a past that's all over the internet? It's not easy to escape that. I'd watch her return to the place she was staying, the same broken expression on her face. It was hard to watch, harder still to admit that despite everything, I still cared. But she found a real support system. People who didn't care about Sienna Knight, who didn't see her through the lens of her past. They saw Lily, the woman trying to put herself back together. She started rebuilding, picking up small jobs, creating a circle of friends who wanted to see her heal. She even started therapy, meeting with others who had been through the same world, the same trauma. Meanwhile, I was battling my own demons. I didn't want to admit it, but the anger was eating away at me. It was poisoning every relationship I had left. People distanced themselves from me. Friends stopped picking up the phone. All I could talk about was Lily, Sienna, all the things that seemed so important but were just pulling me under. I was pushing everyone away, and I knew it. There was a point when even looking at myself in the mirror felt unbearable. That's how I ended up sitting across from Dr. Burke, a guy whose job was to help people make sense of their brokenness. It wasn't easy. Some days, it felt like pure torture, rehashing every fight, every mistake. But he didn't let me get away with it. He made me see that my anger, my obsession with revenge, wasn't the root of the problem. It was my pride, my need to control everything, my fear of being vulnerable. Maybe that sounds like a bunch of jargon, but once I started to unpack it, it made sense. I had been so focused on punishing Lily that I had completely neglected myself. I hadn't taken the time to heal, to let go. While Lily was working on her recovery, so was I, though in my own way. We stayed apart, each working on ourselves. But I kept hearing things about her. Not from her, but through mutual friends. That she was doing better. That she was speaking out about the industry, trying to help others who'd been hurt, exploited. It was strange to see her becoming an advocate, a voice for those who had been through what she did. Part of me respected it. I still carried my anger, but I could see she was trying to change, trying to make something positive out of the wreckage. One day, I got an invitation. Lily was going to be the keynote speaker at a seminar downtown. I almost tossed it. Why would I want to hear her story? But something inside me, maybe that same twisted curiosity, made me go. And there she was, standing on stage with a microphone, sharing her story with a room full of strangers. She talked about her mistakes, her regrets, but also about hope, about how she was trying to move forward. I sat in the back, trying to shrink into my seat, hoping she wouldn't spot me. But she did. Our eyes met for a second, and in that moment, it felt like everything stopped. There was no anger in her eyes, no judgment, just understanding, like she knew what we'd both been through. After the seminar, she came over to me. Her smile was tentative, unsure, like someone who didn't know how to face the person they'd hurt. "Hey, John," she said softly. "Hey, Lily," I replied, my voice steady, but inside, I felt the weight of everything we'd been through. "Thanks for coming," she said. "I wasn't sure you would." "Yeah, well, I wasn't sure either," I said with a dry laugh. She laughed too. The sound of it, it was like a faint echo of the good times we had before everything went south. "You did good up there," I told her. "Talking about it, owning it, that takes guts." "Yeah," she said quietly, her eyes dropping to her hands. "I guess it does." Then she looked up at me again. "I want you to know, I'm sorry, John, for everything. I never meant for things to get so out of control. I can't take back what I did, but I'm trying to be better. For myself. For everyone." "I get it," I said, and for the first time in a long time, I truly did. We were both just trying to move on, trying to heal from the wreckage we'd created. And standing there, face to face with Lily, I realized that forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about letting go. We didn't hug, didn't make any promises, but there was an unspoken understanding between us. We had hurt each other. We had broken each other. But we were both healing, and that was enough. As I walked out of that seminar, the cold air hit my face, and for the first time in forever, I took a deep breath that didn't feel weighed down by anger or regret. I didn't know what the future held, for me or for Lily. Maybe we'd cross paths again. Maybe we wouldn't. But one thing I knew for sure, life goes on, and sometimes that's all you can ask for.